Addams Family Values. Imagine an eerie moonlit night. Ghostly mist rises from a creepy cemetery. Beyond the crumbling headstones, a huge, spooky mansion stands against the sky. From inside the shadowy building, weird sounds echo into the darkness. Somewhere, an animal howls mournfully. Suddenly, someone screams. In other words, just a normal night at the Addams Family house. Little did I know that soon our lives would be anything but normal. It all began right there in our living room, when my mother turned to my father and told him something really scary. She said, "Gomez, I'm going to have a baby." What's so scary about someone having a baby? Well, first of all, you have to know my family, the Addams family. My name is Wednesday. My little brother is Pugsley. We live in the Addams family mansion with my mother, Morticia, my father, Gomez, Uncle Fester, Granny, Lurch the butler, and of course Thing, our handyman. Actually, Thing's more of a handy hand. I suppose we're really like any family. We like to do things together, laugh together, and polish the guillotine in the family dungeon together, just the same as anyone else. For instance, when my mother went to the hospital to have the baby, we all went along, like any family would. We sat in the waiting room together, trying to guess if it would be a boy or a girl, or maybe something nobody had even thought of. Then at last, Father came rushing into the waiting room. "Father," I asked, "what is it?" He took a deep breath and replied, "It's an Addams." He was so proud I thought he'd explode. Now that would have been interesting. At home, we all pitched in to fix up the nursery. It had all the trimmings: peeling wallpaper, cracked mirrors, lots of spiders, and a dusty old black crib. When Mother came home with our new baby brother, she was really surprised. So was Pugsley when I told him what was going to happen next. Everyone knows that when people have a new baby, one of the other children has to go. It's a tradition, I told him. He asked me which of us would have to leave. Well, I said, they only need one boy. During the next few weeks, Pugsley and I tried to get used to having Pubert around. That's what our parents named him, Pubert. Can you believe it? A homely baby like that, getting such a great name. Anyway, we did our best to include Pubert in our games, even though we thought he was there to replace one of us. For example, we let him join our Victims of the French Revolution game. We even let him be one of the victims. We also made sure Pubert was part of the fun when we did our gravity experiment from the roof of the house. But Father caught him before he could hit the ground. Of course, that ruined the experiment. When Mother found out what we were doing to Pubert, she thought it was because we were jealous. That's when Father decided Mother needed someone to help her look after the family. The first 3 nannies who came to work at our house just didn't seem to be cut out for the job. They all left pretty quickly, usually through a window, yelling hysterically. Then someone new arrived, someone different. Her name was Debbie. She seemed young, pretty, and sweet. But I suppose none of that was really her fault. Unlike all the other nannies, Debbie fit right in. She seemed quite fond of Pubert, at least once he stopped growling. She liked me and Pugsley too, and all the rest of the family. But out of everyone, Debbie liked Uncle Fester the most. Short, ugly, unbathed, bald as a hubcap Uncle Fester. What kind of woman could possibly resist a man like that? Uncle Fester liked Debbie too, but he was so shy he could hardly even talk to her. Still, anyone with eyes could see he was falling in love. I had eyes, all right. Buckets of them. Then one day, Mother, Father, and Uncle Fester all went out on an errand. As soon as they left, I saw Debbie sneak into Uncle Fester's room, where she pulled a bunch of folders and papers out of his desk. They all had to do with Uncle Fester's gold and money and stocks and bonds. She seemed very pleased. Later that day, I asked Debbie if she was a real nanny. She said, "What a question." Then I asked why she came to stay with us, and she told me it was to take care of us, all of us. Especially my Uncle Fester, I asked. She didn't answer, but just gave me a mean look. The very next morning, Debbie told my parents a terrible lie. It was probably the most terrible lie a person could tell someone's parents. She said that Pugsley and I had asked to be sent to summer camp. The next thing I knew, Pugsley and I were being stranded in the wilderness at a place called Camp Chippewa. All around us was fresh air, pine trees, and dozens of bright-eyed, well-dressed, happy kids from the suburbs. It was my worst nightmare come true. A stuck-up girl named Amanda was staring at me. She looked like an advertisement for Best-Dressed Camper of the Year. She came over and asked why I was wearing black, like somebody died. "Just wait," I told her. Then we met Gary and Becky, the directors of Camp Chippewa. They smiled too much and had so much energy I thought they were going to fizz up and evaporate. At least, I hoped they were going to fizz up and evaporate. The only good thing about that first day at camp was meeting Joel, if you can call Joel a good thing. He was thin and frail and had allergies so bad he could hardly breathe. I liked that in a boy. He told his mom he didn't want to stay at Camp Chippewa. That's when I knew we were going to be friends. Back at home, Uncle Fester finally found the courage to ask Debbie out for dinner. It must have been quite a date, because the very next day, Uncle Fester had something amazing to tell my mother and father. "Gomez, Morticia," he shouted. "Great news, a miracle." Father said, "That nasty rash, it's gone?" "No," Uncle Fester replied. "The impossible has happened. Debbie and I are engaged." And I thought nothing could be worse than Camp Chippewa. That night, Debbie was in her room at our house watching TV. The program was America's Most Disgusting Unsolved Crimes. Who says there's nothing educational on network television? Suddenly, Debbie saw her own picture on the screen. The announcer described her as what the police call a black widow killer. The kind of woman who goes around the country marrying wealthy men and then murdering them for their money. Finally, the announcer explained that no one knew her real identity or her whereabouts because she was a master of disguise. Unfortunately for Uncle Fester, Debbie was the only person in the house watching TV that night. At Camp Chippewa, things were going downhill. First, I found out that Uncle Fester and Debbie were about to be married. Then, Gary and Becky, the camp directors, got mad at Pugsley and me. We refused to join in what they called a group hug. "We don't hug," I told them. Becky said we were just too shy. "We aren't shy," I told her. "We're contagious." What happened next is almost too gruesome to tell. We were sentenced to the dreaded Harmony Hut. It was like a little prison. The walls were covered with all kinds of frightening things, like colorful posters with kittens, rainbows, and little troll dolls holding flowers. Serious mental torture. Pugsley was terrified. He whispered, "How long do we have to stay here?" "Till we crack," I told him. Late that night, Pugsley, Joel, and I dressed up in black, like ninjas, and made a break for it. We were almost over the Camp Chippewa fence when sirens started to wail, guard dogs barked, and searchlights flashed through the forest. We were caught. The other campers surrounded us. They all wanted us to be punished for trying to escape back to our families. But Gary and Becky had something more fiendish in mind. "Campers," Gary told them, "you know what I think our little ninja friends need. Do you know what just might turn their sad and potentially wasted little lives around?" "What?" Joel asked, with a shudder. Before we could protect ourselves, all the campers locked arms together around us. Then they did something unspeakable. They sang, "Kumbaya." The rest is a blank. While we were stuck at Camp Chippewa, Debbie was back at our house having her bridal shower. All the female Addams relations were there. Cousin It's wife Margaret arrived with her new baby, What. The Siamese twins, Flora and Fauna, came, along with Ophelia and Aphasia Addams. Meanwhile, Father was hosting a bachelor party for Uncle Fester. Besides Lurch and Thing, the guests included Cousin It, Lumpy the Hunchback, and our two-headed friends Donald and Dexter. They were having quite a time. The part they all liked best was a movie starring a very large lady belly dancer. The men yelled, "Take it off," so she did. She took her head right off and threw it out of the movie screen and into Uncle Fester's arms. Now that's entertainment.